Well, thank you very much, Chairman, for your introduction. And it's a real delight to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me. I feel very honoured to be addressing you as this part of this conference, and to be one of the first events in the 2018 to celebrate the ICE's 200th anniversary, as only the 12th woman to become a member of the Institution of Civil Engineers. It was indeed an honour to become the First Lady and so far the only Lady President. So I've seen many changes through my time of membership. I've just had my 50-year certificate of membership, which I haven't yet had the courage to hang on the wall to display to other people, because it's not something I feel is something you go around boasting about, but I feel very proud about. So I hope my comments on sort of professional and institutional experience will help your consideration of the conference's important themes. The briefing I received suggested a strategic direction of sustainability, intelligent, resilient. But on seeing what those letters spelt out, I thought that I would consider leadership, adaptation, diversity, and youth, because I seem to be representing the only lady present other than Carrie Lamb on the list of speakers. And as a schoolgirl, I only ever received one adverse comment on my school reports, and that was, Jean should learn to appreciate the value of conformity. So I'm not conforming to Sir, I'm going to have my own agenda as lady. So turning first to leadership. We need changes to ensure that our leaders, political as well as professional and industrial, always operate in an ethical manner, making sustainability-driven decisions, such as that there are always net benefits to society and the environment, as well as to economy and commerce. We need to find new ways for our decision makers to enable these improvements to happen. In addition, with my long experience of chairing ICE's professional conduct panel, my former membership of the disciplinary board, and my contributions to developing ICE's code of practice, code of conduct, I'm very concerned about the issues of contract complexity that have been developing and the challenges of appropriately checking work both during design and construction. Now, that is striking a very somber note, but I think an extremely important one, because when you read the report of the Independent Inquiry of the Construction of Edinburgh Schools by Professor John Cole, CBE, he published this in February 17, highlighting that the inspection of school refurbishments was not done by either a client team or a team contracted to the client. A key comment in the report is that the procurers of buildings need to consider whether the drive for faster, lower cost construction may be achieved without the detriment of quality and safety. It's very important, and I believe we've developed such complex contractual relationships and lost so much specialist competence in some client bodies. Now, I'm talking about my experience in the UK. Other people can relate it to their own experiences. But certainly in the UK, there is a loss of competence in client bodies. And there's a clear danger of further significant future problems of a similar nature. And yesterday's CROSS report, the confidential reporting on structural safety, highlighted the same pattern of problems in relation to balcony construction. And this is part of a pattern that is beginning to develop. And so it's a very important point that we must, as a profession, take on board. I'm pleased to say that the ICE is showing leadership in this area. For example, as a first response to the Grenfell Tower fire, past President Peter Hansford is heading a review that led to the publication in November of an interim report, In Plain Sight, Reducing the Risk of Infrastructure Failure. So as you can see, there are 4 main recommendations on lesson sharing, validation, competence, and governance, including work towards the profession working more closely with other organisations to share findings from catastrophe mitigation and to improve the sharing of information about failures. I think as a profession, we never wish to admit to others that we have problems, but we must, in order to move forward, share our concerns, share information about near misses, and work on that and use that information to actually improve our future. Because that is an area where I feel that we are not doing enough. And when you read the report, it reminds me of this story about 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was asked to do it. Everybody was sure somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. And that is something we must be very careful about when we have complex contractual relationships and we all believe somebody else is responsible for doing it and not doing it and don't do it ourselves. So if you're a future leader and you see a concern, speak up. Make sure that your messages and your concerns do get heard. Do it in a responsible manner. Do it in a professional manner, but do it. So there's clearly much to be done in this area, and I feel sure that ICE will continue its thought leadership and guidance to members. On adaptation, climate change means that we have a need to adapt infrastructure to these changes. We need to make robust decisions, not only for the long-term resilience of our infrastructure projects and programs, but also to enable adaptation rather than rebuilding as circumstances change. This is seen as particularly difficult in the infrastructure sector, as much of it is built for long-term use. Equally, design decisions now being made on inadequate or short-term data on a range of aspects, for example, on predicted climate change effects, actual and predicted shortages or excesses of water, and predicted traffic flows. So new approaches to the design and construction of the built environment have become essential. And an example locally here that I could find is the construction of the attenuation tank under the centre of the horse racing track at the Hong Kong Jockey Club. And we've got to grab these local opportunities. A temporary loss of facilities at the club while the project was being completed has not only delivered the planned significant reductions in downstream flood risk, but also the creation of new facilities for the club on the top of the tank roof. And this is the sort of imaginative thinking that we need to do in the future. So turning to diversity, and you all thought I'd have photographs there, didn't you, of diverse groups. The conventional aspects of gender, colour, ethnicity, and cultural background are, of course, very important, and we need to continue to work on that. We've made great strides on these issues over recent years, but we've still got more progress to make. Alongside them, we also need to consider and improve how we ensure that our policymakers and project teams take into account different views, different cultural influences, different perspectives of society's wants and needs. Wants and needs are not always the same thing, but there's an expectation there that needs to be managed. Project teams now have to be multidisciplinary to promote the innovation, as Robert's lecture clearly showed, and to enable the use of all available talents, not just a select few, and to adopt a diversity of approaches to solving society's many problems. One example I thought of this idea of alternative approaches was when we were dealing with the recommendations of the Thames Estuary 2100 investigation of flood risk management in the estuary through to the year 2100. Plans emerging from previous such studies had almost invariably had time as their axis. But one of the big imponderables was that we didn't know what the rate of sea level rise was going to be. So we chose to plot the recommended actions against the recording of the sea level rise, with time as a secondary factor. So to make this work, the time curve of predicted sea level rise in the estuary is being continuously updated from the actual data as the century progresses. And the times needed to construct all the various interventions are then estimated. So if a planned intervention, say, takes 15 years, you watch the curve as you're measuring it, and you start triggering the intervention event at an appropriate time. So it means that you're doing the work when you need to, but not before. To enable innovations to continue, it's vital that the profession attracts the most talented young people and use them in a way that actively enables innovation rather than stifles it. And I think we have all, and if my memory serves me right, and it has to sort of work to a long time back to remember when we were young graduates, I remember sort of coming up with bright ideas and being patted on the head and told, well, when we grew up, we'd see that it wasn't really a problem. And we were raising issues like sustainability and climate change. It is important to listen to young people. It is very important to take notice of what is being said, because this is where innovation is going to come from. So we need to attract the most talented young people and use them in a way which actively enables innovation rather than stifles it. I chair the board of Constructionarium, which is an organisation that gives students an opportunity over 6 days to have hands-on experience of actually building, albeit a mini project, and get to stand on the bridge that they've built. They normally put the poster over the bit of the bridge that isn't quite what they want photographed, and they have done the same in this one as well. But it was structurally sound enough for them to be able to stand on it. There is some pre-planning. There is the 6 days actually on site when they really get to grips with construction work. And this does give a taste to people, to the young students, of what civil engineering challenges and satisfaction is all about. And we try to do that as a means of trying to attract them into our industry and our profession when they graduate, rather than alternatives such as finance. So the issues of diversity and youth certainly interact. We need, of course, to encourage young people to become engineers, but also to join the many sectors of work now needed for sustainable, intelligent, and resilient infrastructure. So not just civil and structural engineers, but all the wider discipline. So in conclusion, you'll gather that I think the delivery of innovation to transform and protect lives requires that we address challenging issues under my headings of leadership, adaptation, diversity and youth, and answers as to how we move forward on them need to be agreed and implemented, not only across our profession and industry, but within our clients and political systems. And we need these changes if we are to replace short-termism with sustainable, intelligent and resilient approach to the delivery of sustainable, intelligent and resilient infrastructure. Thank you very much for your attention.